Tonight, a strange bet. 2 million against 15 years of a man's life, alone in one locked room. Here's your question. What does a man become when nobody has watched him for 15 years? Autumn and the darkness outside pressed hard against the windows. An elderly banker paced the length of his study and back again, turning over in his mind a party he had hosted 15 years earlier, on this exact date. Clever men had come, and the talk had turned to a hard question. Which punishment is more humane, death, or a whole lifetime in prison? Most of the guests disliked both. Then the banker set down his glass. "Let us take it for the sake of argument," he said, meaning, let us suppose it only to test the idea. None of us here has lived through either one, but if the choice were mine, the death sentence is the kinder of the two. It ends everything in a single moment. A life sentence ends everything slowly, hour after hour, for 40 years. A young lawyer of 25 shook his head. "Both are wrong," he said quietly. "But if you set them side by side and made me choose, I would take the life sentence without hesitating. Any life at all is better than no life." The banker, far richer then than he was wise, brought his fist down hard on the table. "Rubbish, 2 million says you would break long before 5 years alone in a locked room." The young man looked at him steadily. "If you truly mean it," he said, "I won't stay 5, I'll stay 15. 15, done." And so the whole thing was settled in the heat of the moment, in a sudden rush of feeling, with no cool thought behind it at all. Later, over supper, the banker laughed at his guest. "Think again while you can. 2 million is nothing to me, and you are burning your strongest, freest years for it. By the 4th year you will walk out, and you will hate yourself." The lawyer only smiled and said nothing. 15 years later, pacing his study, the old banker still could not answer the one question that mattered. Why had he ever made that bet? What good had it done to anybody? The terms were written down and kept without mercy. The lawyer would live in a small lodge in the banker's garden. He could not step across the threshold, see a living face, or hear a human voice. No letters, no newspapers, no visitors. He was allowed books, a piano, wine, tobacco, and as much writing paper as he asked for. Anything he wanted could be requested in a note through a narrow window and passed in without a word spoken. 15 years, measured to the second. From noon on the 14th of November to noon on the same date, 15 years on. If he crossed the threshold even 2 minutes early, the banker owed him nothing. And so, of his own free will, with nobody forcing him, by his own decision alone, a healthy young man of 25 closed the door of the world behind him. What nobody could have guessed that night was this. Long before the 15 years ran out, the prisoner would come to despise the very prize he was suffering for. Let's stop the story and pick up 4 phrases from what you just heard. First, for the sake of argument. When you say something for the sake of argument, you are not claiming it is true, you are supposing it, just to see where the idea leads. The banker raises his terrible comparison for the sake of argument, and the whole bet grows out of it. Second, in the heat of the moment. This describes something done while feeling runs too high for clear thinking, a rush of emotion rather than cool thought. 2 lives are ruined by one sentence spoken in the heat of the moment. Third, of one's own free will. If you do something of your own free will, nobody forces you and nobody pressures you. The choice is entirely yours. No court sends the lawyer to that lodge, he walks in of his own free will. And fourth, to come to despise something. To despise something is to look down on it with deep contempt, and to come to despise it means arriving at that feeling slowly over years. Now, back to the lodge. The years passed, and the watchman's short notes told a strange story. In the first year the prisoner suffered badly from loneliness. The piano sounded through the garden at all hours, and he asked only for light novels. In the second year the music stopped, and he asked for the great books instead. In the 5th year the piano was heard again, and he wept and called for wine. Then, in the 6th year, something turned. He threw himself at languages, at philosophy, at history, and read with a hunger that frightened the men carrying books to his window. In 4 years he asked for 600 volumes. Later still, he read anything at all, chemistry beside poetry, medicine beside old plays, like a man swimming among wrecked ships, snatching at whatever floated past. Nobody outside those walls could count the cost of such years. Nobody could add up what all that silence had quietly taken from him. And what of the banker? The 15 years had not been kind to him. Wild gambling on the markets, one bad season after another, and habits he could not break had eaten the fortune he once thought endless. The fearless man of that autumn party was now an old one, counting his losses, standing on the brink of ruin, one step from losing everything. 2 million was no longer a joke to him. 2 million would finish him. "That man is barely 40, he said aloud to the empty study. "He will take my last coin, Mary, enjoy the markets, and I shall watch him like a beggar." Then a thought came to him that he had no wish to look at directly, a thought about the old lock on the lodge door and about how easily a death in that garden might be blamed on the watchman. He stood very still. Outside, cold rain was falling. Just before dawn, he took the key and crossed the wet garden. The watchman had gone inside out of the rain. The lodge was silent. The banker's hands shook so badly that the key rang against the plate. He pushed the door and stepped in and stopped. At the table sat a man, motionless. Not the strong young lawyer of his memory, but something thin and burnt away. Long gray-streaked hair, a beard, a face the color of old paper, a hand so wasted it hurt to look at. He was asleep over his papers, and on the table lay a sheet covered in fine writing. The banker bent close and read, and as he read, the last of his certainty fell away. He had come believing he knew what 15 years do to a man. In a few lines, he saw through that illusion, and understood that the thing he had been so sure of had never been real. "When the clock strikes 12, I am a free man again, and your 2 million becomes mine by contract," the letter said. "But before I take it, hear me. In these years I have not seen a living face, yet in books I have climbed mountains, crossed oceans, loved and sung in valleys of green. Books lifted me above every one of you in understanding. And they taught me that it is all quick and small and passing, your cities, your wisdom, your fame, every clever thing you are proud of. You have chosen lies over truth and called it life. So I despise your books, your wisdom, and the 2 million I once dreamed of. To show you how I hold it, I renounce my claim to the money. I give up the right that is mine, 5 hours before it falls due, and break the agreement with my own hand." The banker put the sheet down and wept. In the morning, the watchman came running. The man had climbed out through the window and gone. And the banker, spared the 2 million he had been within hours of having to pay, took the letter home and locked it in his safe. It was a hollow victory, a win that felt empty inside, because of what it had cost and what it had shown him about himself. Time for 5 more phrases. First, to count the cost. This is not about money in your pocket. It means working out what something has really taken from you, your health, your years, your friendships, usually far too late. Nobody could count the cost of those 15 silent years. Second, on the brink of ruin. A brink is the very edge of a cliff, so on the brink of ruin means one more step and everything is gone. Third, to see through an illusion. An illusion is something that looks real but isn't. When you see through one, the trick becomes obvious and you can never believe it again. The banker sees through his own illusion in a single page of writing. Fourth, to renounce a claim to something. A claim is a right you hold, and to renounce it is to give it up on purpose when you could easily have kept it. The prisoner renounces his claim hours before the money becomes his. And fifth, a hollow victory. Knock on a hollow tree and you hear nothing but air. There is no substance behind the sound. A win can be like that. The prize is in your hands, and the winning itself means nothing to you. The banker never has to hand over a single coin of that 2 million, and the relief tastes of nothing at all. So the bet was won, and the winner walked away from it. Remember how it began. A comparison raised for the sake of argument, a fortune staked in the heat of the moment, and a young man who stepped into 15 years of silence of his own free will. Remember how it ended. A reader who came to despise the wisdom he had swallowed, a banker on the brink of ruin who saw through his own illusion, and a prisoner who renounced his claim to 2 million with 5 hours left on the clock, and a hollow victory locked away in a safe. Now one question only, and it is not a comprehension question. It is yours to argue. Put yourself in that lodge in the 15th year, with the letter still unwritten in front of you. Do you walk out at noon and take the money, or do you leave early and take nothing? Answer in a single sentence, and give me the reason underneath it. I read the reasons more carefully than the answers. That argument is yours to finish, and Chekhov meant it that way, an ending you carry out of the room with you. which is also the best possible moment to begin another story, while these 9 phrases are still warm. There is one waiting on your screen right now. Let it play. Listening is like the prisoner's reading, with one happy difference: you get to keep the world as well. A tip for your second time through: play it once for the story alone, then again with subtitles on, and see how much more you catch. Subscribe to keep a story arriving each week. Whatever you decide about that letter, decide it slowly, and tell me why in the comments.